What if the whites won the Russian Civil War Part 2? In our own timeline, Russia faced a long civil war from 1917 to 1923, mostly between the communist Reds and anti-communist whites. In the end, the communists won, and the Soviet Union got established. But what if that didn't happen? What if the whites won the Russian Civil War? Just like the previous part, I split this timeline in three between the Russian state, Second Russian Empire, and New Mongol Empire. Like in the previous three timelines, Fanny Kaplan kills Lenin, which leads to the communists falling apart, and the whites winning. Here is it Anton Denikin who becomes dictator of the Russian state, and he'd reconquer Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, North Caucasus, Kubandan, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Kazakhstan, Turkestan, Khiva and Bukhara. They still modernized throughout the 1920s and 30s. The Second World War still happens with a German invasion into the Benelux. Germany invades Russia in Operation Barbarossa but is defeated in Anton Grad. And with the combined forces of the United States, United Kingdom and Russian state, they are defeated. Russia would put far-right instead of far-left governments in Eastern European countries. The Cold War would be between ultra-nationalism and democracies. They would give Manchuria to the Kuomintang, who would win the Chinese Civil War, and both Russia and the United States would want that China joins their side. The US probably wouldn't put right-wing dictators, as they may be a ligand with Russia. Syngman Rhee or Ngo Dinh Diem would probably be a ligand to Russia and rule North Korea, or North Vietnam. After Denikin dies in 1947, he is succeeded by Alexander Pavlovich Kutepov as the supreme ruler of the Russian state. In 1959, with Russian help, Batista would take over Cuba, and a missile crisis in Cuba would still occur. After the missile crisis, Kutepov was ousted, and Vladimir Grigorievich Sarsky becomes supreme ruler of Russia. Chiang Kai-shek allied himself with Russia, but after he died, his son Chiang Ching-kuo allied himself with the US. Sarsky dies in 1981, and Vladimir Ivanovich Dyakov becomes leader of Russia until his death in 1985. Boris Mikhailovich Ivanov becomes supreme ruler, and he would give the people more freedom, but this ends with his government being overthrown in 1991 and being replaced by the Russian Federation. But it is unlikely that it splits up, as it would be far more centralized than the Soviet Union. The Eastern European countries would gain independence, and East Germany unites with the West. Just like how far-right support is high in Eastern Europe, in this timeline far-left support is high in Eastern Europe. Vietnam, North Korea, Cuba, Laos and Cambodia are the last countries with far-right government. In this timeline, the world is very similar to our own timeline, but reversed, with the far-left countries being part of the far-right. You know the drill by now. Fanny Kaplan kills Lenin, and the Reds collapse and the white win. Pyotr Wrangel, who was the leader of South Russia, manages to become dictator of Russia, but soon later makes himself emperor of the Second Russian Empire as Pyotr IV of the House of Wrangel. Like in any other version, Russia retakes its territories, industrializes, and has a higher population than nowadays. In Germany, Nazism still rises, and they start the Second World War by invading the Benelux and France. In the next year they invade Russia, but they are defeated at Tsaristine. The combined forces of the United States of America, United Kingdom and Second Russian Empire defeat Germany and split it among themselves. Just like in the Romanov version, they establish monarchies. Bulgaria is ruled by Simeon II, Romania is ruled by Michael I, Yugoslavia is ruled by Paul II, Albania is ruled by Zog I, Hungary is ruled by Otto I, Poland is ruled by Frederick II, and Prussia is ruled by Wilhelm III. The difference here is that the Romanovs don't rule Czechoslovakia. Mostly likely the House of Wittelsbach in Bavaria is chosen, as they used to rule Bohemia. And just like in that version, they install Pai as head of state of Manchuria, which they occupy. They fight in the Chinese Civil War, but are stopped at the Yellow River. Meanwhile, Yeon is crowned Emperor of Korea. And they would still partition Poland after the Poznan Revolution of 1956, with Prussia leaving only Galicia and Lodomeria behind. And the Cold War is still between absolutists and democracies. In 1958, Pyotr IV dies and his oldest son Peter V becomes emperor until 1999. The Second Russian Empire would try to expand monarchism in the same way the Soviet Union tried to expand communism. Russia would help the Qajars to retake Iran, which would be successful as the Pahlavi just overthrew the government, and thus wouldn't see any public support. They would also support monarchist revolution in most of the Arab world like Libya or Syria, or Southeast Asia like Burma or Vietnam. And anti-Western dictators, like Nasser or Gaddafi, couldn't expect that the West would help them out. Russia would also support monarchism in Western Europe, but this would be without success. And only a few sub-Saharan countries would see any monarchist take over. Only really Zanzibar, Rwanda, Burundi, and Somalia. They may also try to bring Brazil and Mexico into their sphere of influence, which may lead to a Mexican missile crisis. They would also try to align themselves with Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Afghanistan, or Ethiopia, which are monarchies. These nations wouldn't experience communism, which led to genocide, radical takeover, or famine. The Cold War is still not over, with the United States in the Western Hemisphere, Western Europe, and most of East Asia, and the Russia Empire in Eastern Europe, the Arab world, and the rest of East Asia. Peter V had no son, and so his brother Alexis II becomes emperor until 2005. He too had no son, and so the son of Pyotr's oldest daughter is crowned as Fyodor IV, and he still rules as. The Russian Empire is far more powerful than in our own timeline. Not only does it include the territories they held by 1914, but they have a gigantic sphere of influence and aren't relatively poor thanks to communism. They are able to rival the United States, who don't have 3 decades of hegemony. A third world war would be between the United States of America and Republic of China on one side, and Second Russian Empire and Republic of India on the other. In this version, Fanny Kaplan kills Lenin, which results in factionalism amongst the communists and a white victory. However, in this version, Roman von Ungern Sternberg, who is in control of Mongolia, becomes head of state. He unites these two and crowns himself as Genghis Khan of the new Mongol Empire. Mongolia reconquers Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, North Caucasus, Kubandan, Ukraine, Belarus, Alash, and Turkestan. They either annex or puppet Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, and Siberia. They then industrials throughout the 1920s and 30s. Mongolia would slowly incorporate the many warlord states in China like the Ma or Shaanxi, and then incorporate Tibet. Genghis Khan would rename Beijing into Kandalik, which would be their capital. They'd also invade Afghanistan, which may work this time. In 1939, Germany invades Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, starting the Second World War. They quickly defeat France, and then Yugoslavia and Greece, and then invade Mongolia. At the same time, Japan invades Mongolia from the east. But the combined forces of the Allies manage to defeat Germany and Japan. Mongolia annexes Romania except for Transylvania and puppets Prussia led by Wilhelm III, Czechoslovakia led by Robert I, Hungary led by Otto IV, Yugoslavia led by Paul II, Bulgaria led by Simeon II, and Albania led by Zog I. In the east, Japan is occupied between north and south. The US establish a republic in Mongolia, a monarchy, and Mongolia also annexes Korea. In this timeline too, they would spread monarchism. But after Syria, Iraq, and Iran became monarchies, Mongolia annexed Iran, most of Iraq, and parts of Syria. Syria, Jordan, and the rest of Iraq may unite into a Hashemite federation. The new Mongol Empire would join the Indo-Pak and annex most of Pakistan west of the Indus River. Mongolia would support monarchist revolution in its southeastern neighbors Vietnam or Cambodia, or monarchies in the Arab world and some East African countries. They would align themselves with existing monarchies like Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, or Ethiopia. After Genghis Khan dies in 1961, the 9th Jepsen Dambukhu Tutu, also known as Jampal Namdrol Chaki Jamaltsen, becomes Khan of Mongolia until his death in 2012. It is possible that they would help the Iterbey to reclaim the Mexican throne, which would end in a Mexican missile crisis. The Cold War didn't end and is still raging on, with the United States of America in the Western Hemisphere and Western Europe, and the new Mongol Empire in Eastern Europe, most of Asia, and the Arab world. After the 9th Jepsen Dambaki Tutu dies, a regency is in charge of the nation until the 10th Jepsen Dambaki Tutu becomes 18 years old. The new Mongol Empire is the most powerful nation in the world. It has the most nukes and its economy is the biggest in the world, but it isn't really stable as it has many linguistic and even religious groups, and many believe that this empire would soon collapse on itself, with Chinese, Muslim and Slavic nationalism rising. A third world war would be them and their allies against the United States and their allies, and if they wouldn't collapse, they could be able to win this war. Just like the other three versions, the world massively changes with this event, and wouldn't be the same. Either better or worse depending on the outcome. If you liked the episode, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.